Your Legislators is made possible by the Minnesota Corn Growers Association. From developing best practices that help farmers better protect our natural resources to the latest innovations in corn-based plastics, Minnesota corn farmers are proud to invest in third-party research, leading to a more sustainable future for our local communities. Minnesota Farmers Union, standing for agriculture, working for farmers. On the web at mfu.org.
Good evening and welcome to Your Legislators. My name is Barry Anderson. I'm your host and moderator of this program this week and all the weeks that follow. We have a great program for you this evening and we're delighted that you have joined us. We're going to have in a moment the introduction of our distinguished panel of guests who will help us unravel the mysteries of St. Paul. But I want to take this opportunity to remind you that this is your program. We want to have questions from you to pass along to our panel. You can send them to us via email at yourtv@pioneer.org or at 800-726-3178. We look forward to getting those questions and passing them along to our guests. Let's begin by introducing, as we do each week, our distinguished panel of guests by giving them an opportunity to tell us a little bit about themselves, the district they represent, committees they serve on, and perhaps their day job or other interesting fact that they think the viewers really need to know. Let's begin with Senator Karla Bigham from District 54 in Cottage Grove. Senator Bigham, frequent guest on the program. We're delighted to have you back again. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I'm State Senator Karla Bigham. I represent the Southeast Metro, so I have from the south side of South St. Paul all the way down both beautiful river valleys of the St. Croix in Mississippi, all the way down to west of Hastings and Inninger. And Cottage Grove is the largest community, and that's my hometown. I serve on Judiciary and in the Senate, and I serve on local government, and I'm the lead on the Civil Law Committee. And prior to this, I was Washington County Commissioner. I also served in the House for 2 terms and on the Cottage Grove City Council.
We're delighted that you're joining us here this evening. Also joining us from District 11 in Pine City, Senator Jason Rarick. Senator Rarick, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me tonight. I'm Senator Jason Rarick. I come from the Pine City area. I represent all of Pine County and Carlton County, the eastern half of Kanabec County, and a little bit of St. Louis County. Outside of the legislature, I'm a union electrician and run my own one-man electrical contracting outfit. I've spent 4 years in the House, and now I'm beginning my 4th year in the Senate. And I have really focused around areas in the energy sector and the jobs sector. I'm the chair of the Labor Committee and honored to be the vice chair for higher ed to help out Senator Tomassoni. We'll keep him in our thoughts and prayers this year especially.
It's worth noting that one of the more, inspiring events of the last several months that I've seen was the greeting that Senator Tomassoni received when he came into the Senate chambers for the beginning of the session, swearing in of the Senate president and so forth. Of course, that's the reason I was there. And it was an impressive display of courtesy and warmth and friendliness that the public doesn't often get a chance to see. And it's unfortunate that it's in a tragic circumstance that we're dealing with here. Also joining us from District 41B in New Brighton, Representative Sandra Feist. Representative Feist, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I represent 41B, which is in the North Metro. That is the southern part of New Brighton, St. Anthony, Columbia Heights, and Hilltop. My other job is an immigration attorney. And I kind of split my time between 2 spheres of what I'm trying to accomplish in the legislature. On the one side is education, and I serve on the Education and Finance and Education Policy Committees. And on the other side is kind of my lawyer brain. And so I also serve on public safety and judiciary committees and kind of focus on criminal legal reforms.
I know all about the lawyer brain. It can be a real problem sometimes. So We'll maybe have some time to talk about some of those legal issues before we're done here this evening. Finally, a frequent guest on our program over many years, Representative Paul Anderson, representing District 12B in Starbuck. Representative Anderson, great last name, by the way. Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks, Barry. Yeah, good to be here again tonight. Paul Anderson, state rep from 12B. My hometown is Starbuck. I don't represent Starbuck, but just off to the east of that, my district covers most of Pope County, a big part of Stearns County, and a smaller part of Douglas County. I'm a farmer and saw the direct impact of last year's drought on my farm here in western Minnesota. I serve as a lead on the Ag Committee in the House. Agriculture is, I guess, my passion, my livelihood too, I guess. Also serve on the Property Tax Division and on the Legacy Committee in the House of Representatives. And I'm in the second year of my seventh term in the Minnesota House.
I think that makes you our veteran legislator on this panel. I'd have to, maybe, does that sound, I think that sounds right. So we'll
Yep.
look to you for veteran assistance as we move through our questions this evening. Let's begin with a question we had last week that we had some discussion about. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but we've got a member of our panel this evening who has introduced a bill on that topic, and I think it's worth doing a little further discussion today to take advantage of that expertise. Senator Bigham, you introduced Senate File 374 dealing with chronic wasting disease and farm deer. Maybe you could let us know what that bill is about, and then we'll give everyone a chance to react, talk us a little bit about that topic.
Absolutely, I'll be as quick as I can, but this is a big topic, and it's actually a complicated topic. So, chronic wasting disease impacts cervet, and it's devastating. It's devastating to herds. It's devastating to our economy because we have well over $1 billion hunting economic impact here in Minnesota. And what I have done is I've listened to the Deer Hunters Association and their feedback, and put together a bill with Representative Jamie Becker-Finn to really put forward strong requirements for cervet farms, which is where we are finding the hotspots of CWD, chronic wasting disease, being spread. So we prohibit moving deer from farms unless it's for slaughter. We prohibit importing deer for cervet. We have a buyout program, which those details are, still going to be discussed. And then, not in the bill, but a very strong component is the testing side of it, which is still being discussed as a live testing or post-mortem testing, and how we can continue to make that very fast to get determination whether or not a killed deer has CWD. And we have testing during the season. We obviously have testing sites throughout Minnesota from our wonderful DNR, and supported by other organizations that have an interest in a healthy deer herd and population. And I also have in the past and continue to be the sponsor for the Adopt a Dumpster program to properly dispose of deer.
Representative Anderson, your thoughts on this chronic wasting disease and farm deer issue generally, and any observations you have about the bill that Senator Bigham has just discussed.
Well, I would agree that it is a problem. And I don't think taking away all the farm deer is going to take away CWD either. So I think we have to somehow try to work together and keep both sides of this discussion going. And I think over the years, there have been more positive cases found in the wild herd in Minnesota here than in the tamed herd. But we heard a bill in the House, and it did some of the same things, and it did get into the testing with a live test. And the only issue that was raised then was that so far the USDA doesn't recognize this live test. So if an animal, a cervidae farmed animal, has to be put down because of 2 positive tests of this live test, and then it's determined that in fact it was not testing positive, who covers the indemnity? Being this is not USDA approved yet, I think there are some issues to be worked out, and this bill needs a little bit more work, I think.
Senator Rarick, what's your thoughts?
This was a big topic in my area. There was a positive case found in Pine County, a lot of discussion. The one thing that I will say, I have a number of Cervidae farms in my area, a couple of rather large ones, and they do everything right. From what I've discovered and seen, it's the kind of what I would call the small hobby farm. They're the ones that don't do the double fencing. They don't take things quite as seriously. That's where we need to do our crackdown, I think, to help them understand. Just because they think it's cute to have a deer, they're putting at risk the hunting, the billion-dollar industry in Minnesota around deer hunting, and we just can't have that. So I think that's where we need to begin. And then as we see the live testing come around, then we'll have a better grasp. But I think our the ones that make a living out of it, they're doing it right.
Do you think there's a reasonable prospect, not necessarily with respect to every piece of the bill that Senator Bigham has outlined, but that some legislation passes in the Senate this year on that topic?
I think there's a chance it can. I'm not exactly sure. It's a little bit out of my area to follow all of it, but I do believe there's something that can be done. Like I said, I think it should focus on the smaller farms to begin with.
Representative Feist, your thoughts on the chronic wasting disease and farm deer issues?
Yeah, thank you. I don't have anything really substantive to add. This isn't an issue that is really prevalent in the suburbs, but I am grateful just for the expertise of my colleagues. I know in the House, Representative Jamie Becker-Finn is really taking a lead on this issue, and so it's just the realm of areas that we need to regulate in the legislature is vast, and we can't be an expert in all, but I'm just really always grateful for the expertise and the passions of my colleagues in areas that I'm not as focused. So I don't have anything brilliant to add, but I'm learning.
We're all very good, and we'll be following that issue as we go forward. So, Representative Feist, let's start with you on this next question, which comes from a viewer in Greater Minnesota. This viewer is concerned about disabled people in group homes, notes wage increases for staff are an issue. This particular viewer has a son who's in a group home. That group home is closing, concerned about finding homes for their adult children. And in this particular case, that home is going to be closing perhaps within the next month or so. Obviously, this is a complicated issue, and employee availability is a problem in a number of industries. Reimbursement rates, all of those things play into this. Representative Feist, if you could give us your thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually one of the main issues that people have emailed me about this session already. I've received a number of emails from parents of disabled children, as well as staff members at group homes. In my neighborhood alone, we have 2 group homes actually just down the street from me. And I know that staffing has been a huge issue. And this is an issue both for the quality of life of residents in the group homes, and also just the staff members don't want to feel overextended to the extent that they can't do their best. So I am definitely in favor of taking some legislative action to ensure that their wages, their working conditions are what they need to be to provide for those community members. I know I have a law firm, I have 8 employees, and I know that when I pay competitive wages, I'm able to find the staff that I need who are dedicated, skilled, and will stick around. So hopefully we can find a legislative solution to make sure that these staffing shortages don't persist, because it clearly, just based on the quantity of emails that I've received, is a very large problem that needs to be addressed urgently.
Senator Rarick, your thoughts on the group home and staffing issues and so forth.
Yeah, it's something that we've talked about for years around here, trying to get more aid and to help raise their salaries. And then I think these last 2 years really exacerbated that. Number of people left. Those who are here have been overworked. I think I follow Senator Abler's lead in this area, and he is coming up. I believe he's going to have a proposal soon, to help give bonuses to people who have been there throughout, and then incentives to get new people in to help alleviate some of that pressure. These are folks that are doing some of the best work out there. And, we hear so much about nurses and conservation officers and corrections officers and the shortages there. These are the people that are going into others' homes so that they can stay there, take care of them. We absolutely have to do something to alleviate the pressure they've been under and to get more people into that field.
Senator Bigham?
Yeah, this comes down to paying people what they're worth. The work, as Senator Rarick said, that these folks do is just unbelievable and um, so important to some of our most vulnerable Minnesotans. And whether it's workers in a group home, nurses, teachers, daycare providers, we have a workforce problem because we have a wage problem. And so we have to figure this out. I also take the lead of Senator Abler and Senator Hoffman on this issue. I am no longer on the Human Services Committee, but we talked a lot about this. And it's about, having access to care so that folks can stay in the communities where their children are, and they're not having to drive long distances to be able to spend time with their families, and I think that's a big deal. And this not only is a Twin City issue, but it's also exacerbated in Greater Minnesota when with workforce shortages. So we have a lot of work to do in this arena across the board. Again, law enforcement, teachers, correctional officers. But this is a big deal, and I think we have opportunity with the blessing of a $8 billion surplus, and we'll find out next week if it's a little more, which I think it's going to be, that we can actually make some meaningful improvements to people's life, both workers and residents.
Representative Anderson, your thoughts?
I think a lot of employers, or nearly all employers, are facing a workforce shortage. But in this area where we're talking about the disability housing and nursing homes, things like that, the state plays a direct role because you mentioned it. It's reimbursement rates. The state really dictates how much these folks can pay, depending on the reimbursement rates the states send to these people. And with wage scales going up in every other line of work, at McDonald's or whatever, they just can't keep up with offering a competitive wage. So yes, the state needs to step up and adjust these reimbursement rates so these homes can offer wages that attract and keep their good workers who do those jobs taking care of our people that need it.
So, Representative Anderson, let me start with you with our next question with a viewer that calls in from southern Minnesota, and this is one of those sensitive issues that involves a balance between environmental and economic interests. This viewer is concerned about southern Minnesota lakes that need to reduce phosphates and nitrogen, largely coming from, perhaps not exclusively, but largely coming from runoff from agricultural sources. And this viewer wants to know what, if anything, the legislature can do about this, either in the short or long run. Representative Anderson, let's start with you. You've got a background in these areas.
Well, I think one of the programs that Minnesota is doing a good job on, it's called a water quality certification program. And the goal is to get up to 1 million acres enrolled in this program. My farm is enrolled in this program where you certify your practices, your fertilization rates, you use prescription application of fertilizer and such, reduce tillage, things like that to reduce the runoff and keep the nutrients on the fields where they belong. And now, especially with fertilizer prices doubling and tripling in price from last year, we just can't afford to let those nutrients wash on down the field and into the rivers. So progress is being made. Some lakes have been taken off the impaired list this past year. Some have been put back on again, but I think we are making progress. And Minnesota is really encouraging the use of this water quality certification program and getting more and more acres signed up every week.
Senator Bigham, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic program, and I really do feel like, everybody deserves clean water no matter what zip code, and we really do need to continue to work with our agriculture community and fine tuning best practices. And they are tremendous stewards of our land because their livelihood depends on good quality land to grow their crops to provide food for us. So I think continuing to work with farmers on what we know best protects our water sources, but also is strong best practices for making sure that they have the flexibility to do what they need to do to provide food for us. So I mean I look forward to continued discussions on this, and I haven't I think cover crop policies is another area that we continue to um, and buffer legislation are other areas that we continue to fine tune and have discussions up at the Capitol, and also are important to keeping our water clean.
Representative Feist.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a hugely important issue in my district. It was interesting when I first got elected. A lot of people emailed me about sustainable farming and soil health. And I know that although we don't have farming in my district, that there is a lot of concern about agricultural pollution. And it's interesting because we focus a lot on the fossil fuel industry and looking at ways that we can transition to renewable sources in that sphere, but we should also be focusing on agricultural pollution because it is actually a huge source of pollution and even greater source of pollution than fossil fuels in a lot of ways. So I think that we need to take an approach where we are regulating, but also finding ways like Representative Lippert's soil health bill, which would support farmers who want to use more sustainable agricultural methods and have some subsidy from the state to encourage that type of farming that will lead to less pollution in the long run.
Senator Rarick, your thoughts, agricultural runoff and phosphate and so forth.
Yeah, this has gotten a lot of attention at the Capitol. I think farmers, one, they want to take care of their land. Two, they don't want to spend money on fertilizer and watch it run off their land. They want to keep it there. I think they're learning better practices all the time. But if we're going to have an honest discussion about this, we need to also talk about people who have built cabins and homes all around our lakes, who over fertilize their lawns. And keep a manicured lawn right up to the lake. And we also need to talk about our cities and their stormwater runoff. They have all kinds of paved surfaces, and all that goes directly into our rivers. So we can't just blame farmers. That they are doing a lot of work, and it's time for everybody else to step up and do their part as well. It's easy to point the finger at somebody else, but for everybody that's doing that, they better think about what they're doing as well and where their runoff is going.
All right, so let's move to a completely different topic, and that is, of course, this year is a year in which bonding bills and the bonding issue generally are very much front and center. Senator Rarick, let's start with you. What do you see happening in this year relative to bonding, and any advice you might have to the House and Senate about what we should be doing in that area? The floor is yours.
Yeah, it is a bonding year, and it seems it's not getting near the attention because of the surplus as it would normally be getting. But the focus I would like to take on it is around infrastructure, water infrastructure, roads, bridges, and then the upkeep of state properties. If most everything is focused around that, then that's something I believe in. That's a responsibility of the state, and we can help out with that. I think a lot of people are tired of kind of the fluff in it to buy votes. I'm hoping we can all look around, and say, hey, if we can help with some, like I said, the water infrastructure, treatment plants, fix up our roads. Those are really good things to do, and we should all get on board and focus there.
Representative Feist, your thoughts on the bonding bill? Any particular projects that you think are critical that you'd like to see the bonding bill include, and your observations about what you think might happen? It's early, I
Yeah.
know. It's pretty hard to tell, but let's take a run at it and see what happens.
Yeah, well, this is my first bonding year, so I don't know what's going to happen, but I can tell you what I hope will happen. I do agree with Senator Rarick. All of those infrastructure, the basics, are so critically important. But I also like fluff because I am a DFLer. And I was really excited by the governor's proposal that it included investments in the historical society sites. I recently toured Fort Snelling and saw kind of the fruits of all of those bonding investments in their upgrades, and it is magnificent. And when I think about like why I love living in Minnesota, why I want to raise a family here, build a business here, be a public servant here, it's investments like those that I think really contribute to our quality of life. And so I'm really excited for that type of slightly fluffier investment because I do think it is worth it in making us a place that is a destination for people who want a good life. And so I'll leave it at that. There are lots of things I'm excited about, and this is my first bonding year, so glad to see those investments.
Even if you've been here a long time, you can't always predict what's going to happen. So there is that to consider. Senator Bigham, bonding bills, what do you think?
I like them. I like bonding bills, and I think having the general improvements, HIPAA, HEPRA, wrong adjective, HEPRA, and water infrastructure are very important. I'd love to see the Hastings Veterans Home. I will be having a proposal for improvements and expansion and renovation to that. And then also the Hastings Civic Center needs help. And so I have a couple fluff pieces, and I too like fluff because it's about being a good partner with our local government and our local communities, and it's important. They don't have the tax base to do this, and there are responsibility a lot of the times in things like what Representative Feist said. They're the state's responsibility, and so we can help out. And our roads and our bridges are critically important. Our ports, our correctional facilities, I think are very important to be investing in. These are jobs, and this is economic development, and so it's a key component of what we need to be doing from a state perspective.
Representative Anderson?
Well, Barry, I'm all about roads and bridges, especially local roads and bridges. I do have one piece we hope to get in the bonding bill for a project in Glenwood called Central Square, but is an example of how the state can step in to help the local projects. They're looking at doing an interchange again off I-94 around Alexandria, which is good, but it would drop all the traffic off on township roads in that area. So we need some help in building up those roads as well to 9 and 10 ton capacities. And I think the state can step in there with these local roads and bridge projects in the bonding bill and help get some of these projects done. So I'm heavy on infrastructure, and I think there's a lot of support for that throughout Minnesota for local roads and bridges.
Representative Feist, we have a question that we get often, or at least we get it most years. It hasn't gone very far, at least as far as I can tell. But this is a viewer from Crosby who wants to talk about the right to repair. And I'm wondering, just to sort of bring everybody up on the everybody who might be watching in our panel about what I'm talking about. This is mostly aimed at technological gadgets and making sure that manufacturers are willing to allow those to be repaired by those outside of the manufacturer's particular universe. Representative Feist, what are your thoughts on this issue? Is there such a bill moving? Any prospects for passage?
Well, there is a bill, and I was emailed about it, and I thought it was scheduled for a hearing and then it suddenly wasn't. But I know I was emailed about it, and I do support it. I do support the right to repair. I do think it's kind of ridiculous. I know I've paid attention to the issue with the farmers who want to be able to repair their John Deere tractors. It just seems like a kind of a racket that forces people to buy new products. It's both unfair to the consumer, and it's also just bad for the environment. It's just seems wasteful to me. But I know that we received a very long letter signed by a lot of companies recently, like in the last week, saying that they really didn't think that there should be a right to repair. So I don't know about the chances of passage. There's most definitely a bill. And in my community, there is support for the bill. But there's definitely very vigorous opposition as well from the companies who say that they don't want people to access the proprietary information, and they're worried about warranties on those products. But I think it's just a fundamental consumer right that if we have a product that's broken and we have the skill and the parts to repair it, that we should be able to do so.
Let's go to our other House member, Representative Anderson. What do you think? Right to repair.
That bill is in the Commerce Committee in the House, and there's a lot more to it than just repairing your cell phone. It also would affect combines and tractors, some huge equipment, and I think there's a difference here. There's a right to repair, which I fully support, but not a right to modify. In the case of a tractor, for example, to go into the software of a tractor and delete some systems that would clean up your exhaust, for example, increase horsepower and make the vehicle unsafe and cause a safety issue. So I'm for right to repair, but it's got to be crafted very narrowly. In the bill that I saw, also makes dealers have to sell products at cost. And I just don't understand where that comes from here in our country with a capitalistic society where we're legislating that a businessman has to sell his products at cost. So this bill needs a lot of work. I don't think it's ready for prime time, and I don't support it in its current form.
Senator Bigham.
I actually think that we should give Senator Rarick some time on this, because I think it isn't you. I think you have some experience in this. It might even be. Am I right? It might be your bill. Am I right?
It's not my bill, but I know a little bit about it.
Yeah, I support it, and I think that it's a fantastic idea for what Representative Feist said, which is that it's very good for the environment, and also I just think it's a good opportunity to for folks to learn about these products, and if they can do it on their own, I think that that's fantastic. We have these fix-it clinics in counties now, part of their waste management programming, and I think that's fantastic too. I mean, these are important elements, and I like it. It's been around forever. Every time I'm on the show, Justice Anderson, I get asked this question. But yeah, this is a great bill. I hope it passes. And it's like it's talked about every session, but it never gets across the finish line.
Senator Rarick, I should have started with you. Talk about right to repair. Your views on this, please.
Yeah, this is one that it can be a tough one. We're not in the same day and age as we were back when you could, do so much work on your own vehicle or your own tractor, your own furnace. In today's technology, so much of it is on a computer. So much of the controls are there. Not just anybody has the ability to do that. So I'm all in favor. I've worked on my own vehicles forever. I've done all that. I love to repair things, but as Representative Anderson said, when you start delving into that computer software, you can start to make changes that were never really meant to be made. And we have to make sure that there's a way with the liability issues that are out there in today's world. We can't have a company be held responsible for something when somebody makes an alteration that was never intended and was programmed out. So it's a very tricky topic right now, and we have to figure out a way to you cover that piece that when you're going in and repairing, you're not altering and changing what it was meant to be.
Well, I'm the wrong guy to talk about this. I very nearly failed 7th grade shop. So I think we've exhausted that topic and we will move on. Senator Bigham, we have a question from a viewer who wants to know what the prospects are for sports betting.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
we had a little preliminary discussion before the program went on today. You told me you had some interest in this, and here we go. We've got a viewer who's interested in it as well. The floor is yours, and we'll go around the table.
Oh,
Sports betting.
well, thanks. I would say bet on the over that it's going to pass. This is a bipartisan bill. Myself, Senator Chamberlain, Senator Housley, Coleman, Coran, and then we also have Senator Klein and Senator Herr, all together with legislation and Representative Stevenson and Representative Garofalo in the House. So we've been working on this. I think we're getting extremely close. The tribes are of the utmost important. Their voice needs to be heard and be respected in this process. My hope is that we have legalized sports wagering ready to go by the end of this year, if we can, and that it has a mobile component through the casinos, that it also includes the track with brick and mortar sports wagering. We also will have money in there for compulsive or problem gambling, and we'll have consumer protections in there for making sure that transactions are transparent. Right now, we don't. This is going on now in a black market, and it's not a safe thing to do, and it's not okay to do. And so we need to shine light on it, and we need to regulate it to have a good consumer experience. And I would say that we're one of the only states that has major league teams in both men and women's sports professionally. We have a lot of tournaments here, and this will enhance that consumer experience and also help, obviously, with the economy. If the state makes a buck or two, good for us. But I think it will pass this year. I'm very excited for the possibility.
Representative Anderson, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to pass. Although I do think, during the Super Bowl there were ads on for Caesar's Palace. I think their sports book and FanDuel, things like that. So it's all around us. It's here, and we may as well join the group, I guess, and do it. I would hope it's going to be available statewide and not only at the casinos around the state. So it's available to everybody. You can already do it online, I guess, anyway. So, yeah, I think it's going to come, and it needs to be regulated, and the state should play a big role in it.
Senator Rarick?
Yeah, this is very similar kind of to the Sunday sales, which I joined in when that was partway through when I first got into the legislature. It's something that's coming. There are a couple different versions out there, so there needs to be discussion as to just how we're going to make it work. But I think the chances are pretty good that we can come to an agreement. I also agree that there needs to be some options maybe for some of the small local charitable gambling people to be a part of it as well. And the other thing I'm going to do, if we can get it to the floor, is I have to convince President of the Senate that my fireworks amendment will be germane.
I have to bite. What's the fireworks amendment?
Oh,
So
we're cooking up something, Justice Anderson. We're cooking up something, Rarick and I.
Yeah, we've been trying to legalize the aerial and audible fireworks in Minnesota since I got in the legislature.
Good luck with the president of the Senate. That's all I can say on that. Representative Feist, we'll leave the fireworks alone, but I will ask you about the sports gambling. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I would say this is an issue that really epitomizes democracy in action, because I would say I haven't had a very strong opinion about this, but I have received many emails from one constituent who feels very strongly in favor. And so I am in favor too. I trust my colleagues here. And I'm glad to hear that there are provisions in the regulation for, addressing, compulsive gambling and just ensuring that there are some guardrails. But But yeah, it sounds like this is a very well thought out bill, and it has support in 41B. And so I feel very comfortable with it. It sounds like it's been a long time coming.
Senator Bigham, I want to go back to you. I don't normally do this, but just one little cleanup question here, and that is on the compulsive gambling thing. And
Mhm.
again, I don't normally get involved in whether or not a bill is a good idea or bad idea. And maybe things have changed. It's been a long time since I was doing Chapter 7 bankruptcies, but compulsive gambling was a major factor in some of those Chapter 7 bankruptcies that I saw. Or at least gambling losses were. I guess I can't make a medical diagnosis, and I'm just wondering, is there something in specific about dealing with that problem that you'd like to share with our viewers about the gambling piece? Because clearly there are
So
people
we
who
will
are
have,
adversely affected.
for sure, and it's a fair question, a good question. So, one, I think separate from this bill, we probably need to update our laws on compulsive gambling. But related to this bill, we will have a dedicated amount of revenue towards programming Gamblers Anonymous and public relations campaigns for if you need help, here's the number to call. I think the other issue, we'll be the 34th state, God willing, that legalizes this. So we've learned a little bit, and these mobile apps actually have protections in place. So for example, if you bet on the Super Bowl and you said the Rams were going to win, you hit the spread, and you won a boatload of money, there's an actual pause before you can take that money to move it on to another bet. And so I think there's things in place like that that will help make a person pause before going on to the next big bet. So it's things like that that now are in place that we have and we know about and we can make sure are implemented.
We have about 15 minutes remaining, a little bit less than that. And one of the big issues that we have spent very little time talking about over the last few weeks, which I think we should now move to, is the question of education. And I'm going to focus on pre-K to high school graduation here. And let's start with that. Senator Rarick, what are your thoughts about what the education bill might look like this year? For our viewers who wonder about this, the last number I saw was something on the order of 40% of the federal or of the state budget winds up going into education. Might be even higher than that. So it's a big deal. Senator Rarick?
Yeah, between HHS and K-12 education, that's a huge chunk of the state budget that goes there. And then there's also federal money that goes to it. So, and then there's local pieces that go to or education as well. So it's very important. I think a lot of people, as long as they feel we're using the money wisely, they absolutely believe in investing in our education system. I think one of the things that we're struggling with is, because of all the shutdowns, how far behind have our kids gotten because of the remote nature, just lack of time in front of their teachers, the inability to be together with each other. So those are things that we're definitely going to have to look at. How do we make up for some of that? What are the repercussions going to be on those students? And then I think some of it too, we have a number of parents who feel they've been kind of shut out. And I don't want to blame every school district out there, every school board. We know the vast majority of them are very good. But we hear stories around the state and around the country, parents that feel they're being shut out. And so I think those are all things we have to look at and address so that people feel comfortable that the money that is going into education is being used wisely and truly being used to educate our kids and getting them where they need to be because of the workforce shortages that we see. And how do we train the older kids to get where we need, and how do we expose younger kids to all the different possibilities that are out there for them, whether it's moving to an apprenticeship, doing a 2-year school, doing a 4-year school. I think we also need to do a better job of exposing our younger kids to all the different options that are out there for them so that they can better choose where they want to go. And I do believe from the stories I've heard from so many of our younger kids that when they see that path and they see a future, and they have a hope, then the education means so much more and they take it so much more seriously. And I think we need to, so it's not just about funding, it's about how do we help these kids find what they're looking for, so that they build that drive to get the best education they can so they can get where they want to be. I think your mic
there's a
went
part
off
of this,
there.
they always say you're on mute. I was on mute. Representative Feist, pre-K to high school graduation. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. Gosh, it's going to be hard to limit this. I have like a million thoughts. So this is
Yeah,
an
it is a
area.
huge topic. It is,
Yeah.
absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah. I am really excited about the surplus. I think there is literally nothing more important that we can spend it on than education. I'm on 2 education committees. We've talked a lot about the importance of investments in mental health supports. So many students have struggled so greatly during the pandemic, and as have staff, and so that's critically important. Last session, I authored a bill that passed that created additional funding around suicide prevention training in schools. I'm also super wonky on education finance, and I am about to introduce a bill that will help us to better calculate what's called compensatory revenue, which are dollars that we target towards low income students. And we're just going to have to, it's craft, the way we measure it right now is really bad. So I'm introducing a bill to create a working group to really look at that issue. And it would be a bipartisan working group. I also am really passionate about education policy, and I and Senator Bigham introduced the Student Data Privacy Act, and this is the year. It's been around for a very long time, and I believe this is the year because we have seen an explosion of remote learning, and student data laws were written in the 70s when data was pieces of paper in a filing cabinet, and now that data is in the cloud, and now students are being monitored while they're using school-issued devices at home for personal use. And so this Student Data Privacy Act will just bring our student data laws into the 21st century. I also agree with Senator Rarick that we need to make sure that students have kind of a full vision of all of their possibilities. And I'm working with the 2-year community and technical schools on a bill to create universal FAFSA in Minnesota. And this is a bipartisan bill being carried in the Senate by Senator Zach Duckworth. That would require FAFSA completion for high school graduation. And in the 7 states that have done this, they've seen a dramatic increase in FAFSA completion, and as a result, college attendance, in particular by low-income students. So I feel like this is the year for that as well. And I have 800 million other things that I could say, but I'll leave it at that. I think this is the most important thing that we can spend money on. It's an investment in the future of our state and future leaders.
And for our viewers who are wondering what FAFSA is, you need to have a kid getting ready to go to college, but that's the financial aid formula for potential college students. Senator Bigham, education.
Well, Representative Feist is a true champion in education policy and education issues, and we're lucky to have her on the show tonight, but also in the House because she knows this issue very well. One thing I will say just for viewers to know that this isn't a budget year. We do have a completed budget. We do have a surplus, and it doesn't mean we don't get to spend it, but we don't have to. So it is a bonding year. But first and foremost, no matter what year it is, we need to be properly funding education. A record number of property tax levies were passed, which shows that people want to invest in education, but the state is not keeping up with properly funding our schools, and the federal government is not keeping up with their commitment, causing school districts to have to go to property tax levies because they're not keeping up with inflation, funding isn't, and growth. And so that's a problem. We have to address it cross subsidy. And so this is a financial issue we have to address. It is an investment in our future. And that's super important. And I think mental health services, food insecurity services, technology are all huge issues that we need to address and be partners with our local school districts. The other thing I will say is, again, we have a teacher shortage issue. The morale is low. they are just they're run down. There's just no other way to burnt out, run down. There's no other way to say it. So, we got to pay people what they're worth, and we got to make sure that we're investing in our teachers, our paras, our bus drivers, and custodians that keep the buildings clean and safe. And so we have to deal with those issues too, in um, protecting our educators and all the personnel in our schools, and making sure that they have what they need to teach the students, and again making an investment. And I would say heck yeah to Senator Rarick about making sure that we're showing students um, the different paths to a career that is worthy of their talents, and to motivate them and to inspire them to achieve their highest potential, whether that's the trades, whether that's accounting, whatever, 4-year college, 2-year college. But that has to be a priority because it does make their experience more meaningful.
Representative Anderson, your thoughts?
All of the above. I agree with what my colleagues have said tonight. It has been a rough couple of years in education. COVID really has brought this on. Teachers have had a tough time. Students have had a tough time. And not so much, I think schools with the COVID money they've gotten from the federal government and such, financially, I think most of them are doing okay. But we need to invest in, I think, in the career and tech education. And I think our workforce shortage is really showing us and showing students that I can, go into high school and in the career tech ed and go to a 2-year trade school and come out of there with a job that I can make, 50, 60, $70,000 a year doing, and not have a lot of student debt when I finish. So I think we need to kind of adapt and have our schools teach what businesses need, what they want to have people ready for coming out and getting a job with them right away. So kind of a transition time, I think, as we adjust to not the 4-year college mantra to one of let students pick their path, whether it be a trade or liberal arts, and go from there. And we as a state should support all of the above. And I agree with what my colleagues have said.
I'm wondering, just to ask the panel more generally, one of the issues is, of course, that the legislature has enacted a series of programs over many years. I mean, I'm old enough to remember outcome-based education, which goes all the way back to the 1980s. Every governor's got a set of programs. Programs don't seem to go away, and I'm wondering, has there been any thought to some kind of a bipartisan long-term review of programs maybe we should end, just to put it bluntly? Are we looking at all at reducing the burden on our teachers in terms of everything we ask them to do? Anybody want to take a run at that?
Yeah, I would say I think one of the biggest things, they have to fill out so many reports and there's so much testing. I think the state should back off from a lot of the mandates and open things back up to let local schools and school boards make some of those decisions. We can get out of the way. We keep, just like you said, we pile on thing after thing of what they have to do, and then they can't do the things that they want to do that they know are so good for their kids. I don't know if there's a group out there looking at it, but they sure should be.
I would
I
add the
know
course
that
offerings are important in that not all students need to take higher algebra, for example. If they're going into a career and tech education field, design the courses and don't test all the kids in higher math, for example, if they don't need to pursue that to go into their particular career option. So we need to, again, fine tune our systems and let the students go where they want to go and not make them all test for a 4-year college and higher math, for example, when they really wouldn't need that with the career path that they would choose to follow.
Senator Bigham, you were going to make a point there too.
Yeah, I think that taking a look at different programs is done occasionally. I know that a couple of years ago, I believe, we looked at some of the state level forms for special education, but a lot of that is federal. And it is a lot of paperwork. And I also do think that we have to not have teachers teaching to test, but teaching the curriculum. And so I agree that we have to look at redoing how we are testing students. And I think a standardized like ACT test would probably be better than what we're doing now with, kind of constantly testing. So I think those discussions.
Representative Feist, you get the last 30 seconds on this. Representative Feist?
Cool. Yeah, I was going to say that one of the priorities that the St. Anthony New Brighton School District has brought to me is that they'd like more flexibility in how we define instructional seat time, so that students could have, like Representative Anderson said, more variety in the types of education that they can receive credit for, that it doesn't have to be like a butt in a seat in a classroom looking at a teacher. And I also introduced a bill around what's called extended time revenue that would also look at more non-traditional class time for credit and funding for that type of learning.
All right, on that closing note, that productive and helpful suggestion of possible ideas for the legislature to consider, we're going to conclude our program for the evening. I want to thank our distinguished panel of guests who've been very helpful in unraveling the mysteries of St. Paul. I want to invite you, the viewers, to return next week for our next program of Your Legislators. Thank you and good night.
Your Legislators is made possible by the Minnesota Corn Growers Association. From developing best practices that help farmers better protect our natural resources to the latest innovations in corn-based plastics, Minnesota corn farmers are proud to invest in third-party research leading to a more sustainable future for our local communities. Minnesota Farmers Union, standing for agriculture, working for farmers. On the web at mfu.org.